This is Joe, the old stargazer, and I'd like to welcome you back to Looking Up. If you've not seen the first episode in the series, I suggest you go watch it, then come back to this one. These first several episodes build on the ones before, so it's best if you watch them in order. Okay, let's get going with the Circumpolar Constellations. First of all, you'll have to know how to find the northern sky. If you already know the cardinal directions of north, east, south, and west from your viewing location, that's fine. However, some folks might not know how to find north where they are, or maybe someday you might find yourself wanting to look at the stars from a location other than the one you're used to. So let's talk about an easy way to find those directions. You could, of course, use a compass, assuming you know how, but let's assume you don't have one and still need to find north. It's actually fairly easy. Go outside just before sunset and watch the sun go down. Not only can this be a relaxing activity, but it can help to find general directions. Face the setting sun. You will be facing roughly west. East will be directly behind you. Still facing the sunset, hold both your arms straight out from your sides. Not in front of you, but straight out from your sides at shoulder level. Your right arm will be pointing roughly north, and your left will be pointing roughly south. If you intend to wait around another hour or so for the stars to come out, fine. If not, make a note of the direction of north. You can use a landmark, say a building or a tall tree off in the distance. Just remember which way is north so that when the stars do come out, you can face that direction. Simple. The view you're seeing here is of the northern sky on a midsummer night at around 10:30 from an observing location near Charlotte, North Carolina. Just for reference, this is about the same view you would see, say, from Memphis, Tennessee, Little Rock, Arkansas, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Amarillo, Texas, Albuquerque, New Mexico, or Bakersfield, California. I'm going to turn on the star pictures you saw in the last video, and I'm going to run the sky through 24 hours of time in just a minute or less. This way, we'll be able to see that several constellations rotate completely around the North Pole, never setting even during the day when they're invisible to the naked eye. This is why we call them circumpolar. They circle the pole. Let's cycle back to our 10:30 view and turn off the lines. There. We're going to look at 6 constellations that take this merry-go-round ride around the sky. First of all, let's look at one of the most easily recognizable star patterns in the night sky, one that almost everyone knows, the Big Dipper, or at least that's what we call it here in North America. It consists of 7 fairly bright stars, 3 forming the handle of the dipper and 4 forming the cup. If you don't know what a dipper is, it's a long-handled cup that was once used to dip water out of a bucket, usually from a well. It was used for drinking and for transferring small amounts of water from the bucket. I remember when I was very little drinking ice-cold water from my grandparents' well from an old tin dipper. Dippers were made of metal, other materials, and occasionally even hollowed-out gourds. And here I bet some of you were trying to make out a picture of dipper pines from the cartoon Gravity Falls. Other cultures have different name for this star pattern. In England, it's called the plough. The 3 stars that make up the dipper's handle are the tongue of the plough, where you hitch your horse, mule, or oxen. The 4 stars that form the dipper's bowl make up the blade of the plough. In China, it's called the wagon. The handle stars form the tongue of the wagon, while the bowl stars form the body of the wagon. No wheels that I can see, however. If you can reliably locate the Big Dipper, you can use it to find something interesting. Take the 2 front stars of the dipper's bowl. Draw a line through them and extend them across space like this. The line ends up pointing to a fairly bright star. This is Polaris, the North Star, or sometimes called the Pole Star. If I add a grid to the sky and move the stars around, you can see that Polaris is very nearly directly over the North Pole. So the circumpolar stars circle around Polaris. Polaris isn't exactly over the North Pole, so no easily visible star is, but it's pretty close. Some people think that Polaris is the brightest star in the sky. It's not, by a long shot. Counting stars in the southern sky, many of which we can't see from here, there are 45 stars in the night sky brighter than Polaris. In fact, 2 of these stars are in the Big Dipper. The star Alkaid at the tip of the Dipper's handle and the star Dubhe, the top pointer star in the cup, are both brighter than Polaris. Polaris's main claim to fame is that North Star nickname. Polaris is at the end of a bit of a warped handle and a small bowl that form the Little Dipper. However, the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper are not names of constellations. These 2 patterns form part of a much larger constellation named Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the Big Bear and the Little Bear. One thing that will quickly become apparent to anyone studying the constellations is that our ancestors seem to have pretty vivid imaginations. It's not easy to make out a bear out of either one of these star patterns, certainly not the Little Dipper. The Big Dipper and its surrounding stars aren't too bad. Let's see if we can make out the bear. The bowl of the Dipper marks the back end of the bear. Along here are stars that represent his neck. Here is his head and his chest. Here are his front legs down to the paws. Here's his belly, and here are his rear legs. Finally, the stars of the Dipper's handle make the long flowing tail of the bear. The Little Dipper is the same pattern, just more difficult for us to see. Of course, there is a problem with this picture. Bears don't have long tails, do they? So why in the world do we have 2 bears up in the sky with long tails? There's a joke in there somewhere about a long tail to tell, but I won't use it. Oh, I already did, didn't I? Sorry about that. This story goes back to the ancient Greeks over 2,000 years ago. Back then, the Greeks believed that there were many gods and goddesses that lived on top of Mount Olympus, a large mountain a few miles south of the modern city of Katharina. The king of their gods was named Zeus. Zeus had a habit of coming down from the mountain to walk among the humans. One day on such a walk, he came across a beautiful young lady named Callisto. She was so lovely that Zeus fell in love with her right then and there. As time went by, Callisto and Zeus had a son named Arcas. Unfortunately for Zeus, he was already married to an Olympian goddess named Hera, and Hera wasn't very forgiving. When she found out about Callisto, Hera came down to Earth and, using her magical goddess powers, changed Callisto into a bear. When Zeus found out about this, he went back to Earth to search for Callisto. He found her in the forest doing whatever it is that bears do when they're alone in the woods. As he was watching her, he noticed a young boy draw an arrow out of his quiver, load his bow, and take aim at Callisto. Zeus recognized the young boy immediately as Callisto's son, Arcas. Zeus had to think quickly to prevent Arcas from killing the bear who was really his mother. What did Zeus do? Did he change Callisto back into a bear? Nope. Apparently the Greek gods didn't do things the easy way. Using his magical powers, he turned Arcas into a bear. Well, I guess it makes some sort of sense. A bear can't really shoot a bow, so Callisto the bear was saved. Zeus got to thinking that Hera probably wasn't done with her revenge on Callisto, and Callisto and Arcas still weren't safe from her wrath. So he thought and thought about the best way to protect them from Hera. He finally decided that the best place for them would be up in the sky where Hera couldn't touch them. He started to reach for the bears to fling them up into the sky, and he stopped. Zeus realized that he couldn't grab the bears by their heads because they have sharp teeth and he might get bitten. He couldn't grab them by their paws because they had long, sharp claws and he didn't want to get scratched. So he grabbed them by the only safe place you can grab a bear, by their short, stubby tails. And just so you know, I don't recommend you try this. Zeus then started spinning faster and faster and faster until the bears were just a blur. Giving a mighty heave, he let them go, and they flew up into the night sky and became Ursa Major, the big bear, or Callisto, and Ursa Minor, the little bear, or Arcus. And of course, during that spinning process, the bears' tails got all stretched out of shape, and that's why we have two bears in the sky with long tails. See? Told you it was a long tail. You may have noticed a bit earlier in the program that I called a few stars by name. Most of the brighter stars in the sky have names of their own, usually related to the constellation they're part of. The star Dubhe, for example. Dubhe is an Arabic word for bear. In fact, many of our star names are Arabic in origin, while the names of most of the constellations are Greek. The reason for this is based in history. Somewhere around 2,500 years ago, astronomy became a popular field of study in Greece. Many books were written in Greek about the subject. Unfortunately, the world went through some tough times over the next several hundred years. Many, but not all of these books were destroyed or lost. About 1,000 years ago, there was a rebirth of interest in astronomy, this time in the Arabic world. From around the years 900 to 1300, Arabic astronomers studied what remained of the Greek texts and built upon that knowledge. This is why a lot of our star names are Arabic in origin. Let's take a look at a few other constellations that ride this merry-go-round across the sky. Almost directly across from the Big Bear is this pattern of 5 stars that looks like a lopsided letter W or an M, or perhaps the number 3. This is the constellation Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia was a queen in Ethiopia who was supposedly very beautiful and very vain. She boasted that she was more beautiful than some of the goddesses on Mount Olympus. This didn't sit well with those goddesses. We will learn the full story of Cassiopeia in a later episode. For now, the best we can do is try to see a chair lying on its side here. Legends talk about poor Cassiopeia having to circle the North Star so that often she was upside down. In this image, she's lying on her side. Just above Cassiopeia is the constellation Cepheus. Cepheus was the king of Ethiopia and the husband of Queen Cassiopeia. Cepheus was supposedly one of the famous Argonauts who accompanied Jason on his quest for the Golden Fleece, one of the more famous stories in Greek literature. Because of his efforts on Jason's quests, the Greek gods placed Cepheus in the heavens to honor him. There's really not much here to see to our eyes. If you can make out the 5 stars that form a lopsided house or a baseball home plate, you know that you found Cepheus. There's another larger constellation up here that starts near the pointer stars of the Big Dipper, then wraps up and around the Little Dipper, dips down towards Cepheus, and then bends upward, finally ending in these 2 relatively bright stars here. This is Draco the Dragon. Every time I say that name, I have to stop myself from doing it in a bad Scottish accent. Draco the Dragon! The 2 bright stars, Rastaban and El Tanin, represent the dragon's eyes. I always thought this constellation looked more like a snake than a dragon. I always saw a cobra ready to strike. There are many dragon legends in all cultures. There are 2 or 3 related to this constellation from the Greeks alone. One of them had the Greek goddess Athena battling a dragon and finally defeating it by flinging it up into the night sky where it got stuck, wrapped around the North Celestial Pole. The last constellation in our tour of the circumpolar stars is one you may not be able to see from your location. This is because most of the stars are rather dim. It consists of a few stars that form a sort of lopsided triangle and a star up above them. Does this line drawing suggest anything to you? Can you see perhaps the hint of a giraffe? The constellation is known as Camelopardalis, the giraffe. This constellation is not one that the Greeks recognized. but was named in 1624 by a Dutch astronomer. Of course, since it was named so recently, there aren't any good stories or myths about it. The name Camelopardalis means leopard camel. Giraffes have long necks like camels do, but of course they're a lot longer. And they also have spots like leopards do. At least the name is fun to say. You can impress your friends by saying, "Look, it's Camelopardalis." Well, that concludes our study of the circumpolar constellations, at least the ones that are normally visible from my location. The first chance you get, go outside, see if you can find the Big and Little Dippers. Remember, they might be in different locations from what you see here, depending upon what time of year you're looking. If you can also find Cassiopeia, Draco, and the others, then you're going to be well on your way to becoming a stargazer. Extra points for Camelopardalis. See you next time when we take a peek at triangles and teapots. Remember, keep looking up.